So a lot of you guys have worked together. A lot of you started on Reservoir Dogs, and you've come back to various projects. Let's try and take this back a little bit to where you first ran into Mr. Tarantino, and where you first came into this project. What the mindset was. It has this kind of legendary status, and I guess I'm trying to get us back to this indie filmmaker where you're all trying to make this thing and just trying to make it all come together with not a lot of money. So can you take it? Well, Richard, why don't you start? Because I think you were one of the guys that kind of made it get a green light.
He's the perfect guy to start.
Well, we worked together on Reservoir Dogs,
Mm-hmm.
which cost $1.5 million to make. And then, from the success of that, Quentin went on to Pulp Fiction. But I don't think with either film, I certainly didn't expect that either film would come near the success that they had or find the audiences that they found. So you certainly don't sort of set out with that intention that anyone dreamed that we would be sort of sitting here 15 years later, or that the film would have achieved the success that it did. And it was made in a very similar way to the way that we made Reservoir Dogs, with really the same people and in the same way. So it was made in the same sort of spirit, if you will.
How about you guys, the Wascos? How did you guys come into this? At what point?
Well, we were fortunate to work with Quentin on Reservoir Dogs, and I have to say that Quentin creates an atmosphere that allows all of us craftspeople to do our best, and that's not the case on a lot of movies. That we've been doing this for now getting on 30 years, and the one thing that Quentin, I think, can bring out of everybody, actors, is to just to be relaxed and to be able to do their best job. And I think that, as Richard said, that's what we went off and did on the second and third and fourth movies with Quentin. So we've in a way grown up together, and it's a very fortunate situation. I don't know if you want to add anything.
What were your first impressions? I mean, do you remember the first time you met him, and how did you interview for the job, or how did you get involved in the?
I interviewed. I think Quentin would have to say, but I've done a bunch of period movies, and I remember picking Quentin up at his mom's house in Glendale, going to the set every day, and so.
Yeah, no, David came in and auditioned for Reservoir Dogs, and one of the things that he had done is he'd done a whole lot of independent films that were period-based or rural-based. Now, that's nothing was like Reservoir Dogs, but the point being was, I knew he didn't have all this money in the world to create these 30s or 50s sets, we're shooting in Kansas or whatever. So I figured, oh, great, well, he'll be great at going into whatever warehouse I choose, and then we'll make that work good. We can find locations and then make that look good, because he showed that he was able to do that with period stuff when I know he didn't have all the period stuff in the world. He just had a good structure and then brought it out from there. And then from there, it's just been ever since.
So Betsy, talk about the costuming aspect of it. You're coming into the project. What do you remember? What were your first impressions? I mean, I assume, did you read the script first, or what was your first connection to the project?
Well, Lawrence introduced me to Quentin on Reservoir Dogs, and your enthusiasm is just so inspiring. It was just really great to have a chance to do it again on Pulp Fiction. And I can't remember whether I read the script first, or we just went to Denny's and sort of sat down and did the movie.
Yeah, I can't remember about that either. I think it was like, okay, here's the next one, let's go. All right.
Yeah, and I think we just sat down and he told me the story, or I had read the script. I don't really remember, and we just sort of took it scene by scene and discussed the characters and who they were. And so by the end of that breakfast, I sort of felt like I was on the same page with you, and then we just started.
Where was he starting from as far as the look of the film? What were the?
Well, both the movies have a common thread, And so we started with the common thread from Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, actually, that's a good thing what she's saying, because it's because in a weird way, with all the people that worked on Reservoir Dogs, it wasn't a starting from scratch as far as Pulp Fiction was concerned. If it's like, okay, well, we know what he likes, and it's going to look like this, and he likes these bright colors, and he likes it clear as a bell, and he likes this T-shirt, and he likes this black suit. So there was this kind of there wasn't that big think tank aspect. Am I wrong about that? There wasn't this big think tank aspect about Pulp Fiction, because we'd already kind of been through a lot of that, even in the casting, on Reservoir Dogs. So it was like, okay, here's the next one, guys, let's show up. Yeah, it's when I wrote the script, I was thinking of Michael Madsen for the role of Vincent. And I'd written it. A lot of the characters I wrote it for actually ended up not being able to do it. I wrote Matt Dillon for Butch, and I wrote Michael Madsen for Vincent. And
Lawrence
literally,
Fishburne.
what?
Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah, and Lawrence Fishburne actually. Yeah, for Jules. And then, and literally the week before I was finished with the script, Michael Madsen took Wyatt Earp, so he wasn't available. And then we offered it to Fish, and Fish turned it down because he didn't want to do a supporting part anymore. And he only wanted to do leads from that point on. And but that was kind of okay, because I liked the idea of Larry Fishburne and Michael Madsen together. I thought that was a real badass team. But once that got fucked up, now I had to really go back to the drawing board and really think about it all over again. But I tend to that's how I tend to do casting. I mean, the thing is, you can't help but have people come into your mind, especially if you met somebody and you think they're interesting and they show up on the page. And so you keep seeing me. I'm always watching the movie in my head as I'm making it, as I'm writing it. So I've seen that movie a zillion times. And then when all of a sudden when they drop out or they can't do it or for whatever reason, it's not always such a bad thing, because I've seen that movie a zillion times. I could almost be getting bored with it. All right, so when that doesn't work out and I have no commitments anymore, then you can kind of open your brain up and look at the whole big wide world out there, and now what movie am I going to make? And it's kind of, and it's interesting like that. So then you put Sam and John together, and now you got a comedy team, as opposed to them being badass, all right? And so that's the way it works. When one guy can't do it, then it's usually you need the two other guys to do it.
What about Sunday Bloody Sunday, when we had Sam and Paul Calderone?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, actually, there was do you want to tell that story?
Well, Sam Jackson came in to
Oh, let me set it up. Let me just set it up.
Yeah, you do.
I'll just set it up. The thing about it was we had a big deal. One of the biggest deals I've ever had as far as casting was concerned ever was the actor Paul Calderone, who plays English Dave in the movie, came in and murdered in an audition. Just killed it. We were blown away. And I was always a fan of Paul from Q&A and King of New York and everything, and we were just blown away by what he did. And I was like, okay, that's it. That's who I want for Jules. All right. And then Sam Jackson came in. And the thing is, Sam Jackson was great, but Sam kind of thought he had the part. So he didn't kill the audition. All right. And so I go, okay, well, that's it. Okay, Paul gets the part. And then Harvey Weinstein's like, whoa, wait a minute. So we keep going back and forth on this. We're going back and forth. And Richard Gladstein was our producer, and he was one of the big guys at Miramax. So we kept going back and forth. And I'm hard on, but at the same time, while I'm fighting for Paul Calderone, I know what war I'm fighting here. I know Sam will be fantastic. He just didn't bring it that day. So it all came down to
We all begged you to read him again.
Yeah.
We were like, you got to see Sam one more time.
Right, exactly. And the thing is, I wasn't trying to not do that. I know Sam would be fantastic. It was an embarrassment of riches. So we had we flew Paul in, and we literally had a big Sunday Bloody Sunday. And what it was is Paul Calderone. What we were going to do is this: we were going to erase the first two auditions. We were going to bring them in on Sunday. Paul be with them for an hour, 90 minutes. It doesn't matter. All right. Richard would be there to represent the company, and Paul would do his thing. He'd split. Sam would come in here as long as we wanted him. He'd do his thing. He'd split, And then we would literally decide. And Harvey Weinstein, look, Richard, you're there, so as long as you agree with what's going on, then it's all good. So it was all, that was the way it was going to be. And Paul came in there, and Paul was terrific. He killed. When he walked out, Richard was like, okay, well, I guess that guy's got the fucking part. All right? And then Sam Jackson came in. And Sam not only killed, it was like we were sitting in the theater watching the end of the movie. And that was like, okay, I guess Sam got it. And that's what happened.
Paul was so good that, and I was all this pressure, you know, you really should cast Sam, that I'm hearing before we go in there. And Paul walks in, and it was, you couldn't imagine anyone could do it better. And I remember we went out to lunch, because we didn't want them to come like bump into each other and everything. So Paul read, and then we like went out to lunch, and no one said a word, but it was so obvious that it was Paul. Like there was no way that and then Sam came in, and it was insane.
It was interesting. I actually, I had to call Paul and let him know what was going on. It's not one of the best parts about being a director. The phone was kind of heavy. Anyway, I pick it up, and I call him up and tell him, and he goes, no, I knew it. I go, what do you mean? He goes, look, no one could have took the part from me the first time I auditioned. But that last one, it was good. But somebody could take it, and I knew Sam Jackson was coming in next.
So, Stacey, I want to ask you a question, because I know that this project started out at a different studio and then ended up, so the way it got set up, could you talk about that a little bit? Some of the...
Yeah, I had read Reservoir Dogs before they started shooting the film, and of course, it was staggeringly original and fun and amazing, and I'd been wanting to meet Quentin, and to offer him a movie to adapt a book, which he didn't want to do. And then we began talking about him, what was he going to do next? And so we began the process of making a deal for whatever he wanted to do after he made the movie. And basically he said, what I'm going to write is 3 stories that are one story. And we're like, great, okay, we're going to sell that. 3 stories that are one story by a guy who hasn't made a movie yet. But it was great with, basically they'd have 30 days to greenlight the movie with the budget and the cast list, or we had it back, basically. So it was not the simplest process, but by the time they actually made the deal, the film had been shot, and he'd been talking about it for a long time. And I think even the 3rd story completely changed, because it was originally going to be kind of a getaway-inspired story for, well, oddly, it was going to be Sam and Pam Grier in your original imagination of the way the story's laid out.
Yeah, actually, hold on to that for a second, because the kind of interesting thing was my initial idea before, I never know exactly. I have a direction of where I'm going to go for the end, but no real writer really knows what the fucking end is until they get there. And hopefully you've done all this stuff that you couldn't even have imagined it before you put the pen to paper. And one of the things is I had a whole other fucking story for the 3rd story. It was like a black getaway kind of thing. And it would have involved the Sam Jackson character. And I'm in Amsterdam, and I've just written the 1st story, I've written the 2nd story, and I'm getting ready to start writing the 3rd one. And again, page count is always my fucking nemesis, all right? And I just see the thing getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And
or as I like to say, 162 pages, final draft. That was the first script.
And literally, it was, I'm looking at, I can't fucking introduce these people from scratch. And actually, it wasn't Sam. It was going to be somebody else, another character. It was actually all new characters. And I was like,
No, but it was when you wanted Lawrence Fishburne
Yes,
for the
exactly,
other
yeah,
part.
yeah.
It was going to be Sam that you wanted for that, which is how he ended up coming in for this.
Yeah, but it was a different character.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I'm just starting to write, and I go, I can't introduce these brand new characters in fucking hour 60. It's who cares? Who cares? That's not going to work at all. And then I go, well, wait a minute. I have a non sequitur at the beginning by having these guys show up with these fellows and taking this briefcase, and I actually had the thing where they shoots the guy in the car earlier on. I don't know if I did that. I had something like that. But the thing is, oh, wait a minute. This is my next story. Let me just hang out with these guys all the rest of the day, and let's just see what happens. And then that started working out so great that, again, I had this other weird anxiety. I was like, wow. Because I thought if that was going to be 90 minutes when I was done. And I was thinking that, man, if I hadn't done this big idea with all these 3 stories, this story about how they just get rid of the body could be one of the best little gangster films ever made. Just this like little minor thing about they accidentally kill a body and what do they do with it. I'd never seen a movie like that before. And I was like, man, maybe I should have done this big ass thing. Maybe I should have just done that thing. But it all worked out. And but the thing is, but it is a situation where literally I had the first 2 stories written, done, and literally had to come up with the 3rd story. But it was always there all along. I just stretched it out.
So
So
Stacey,
he turned in the script, 162 pages, final draft, with these ideas for the cast and roughly what the budget was, and it was a TriStar. And
just one question before we go further. Was the script, did it jump around in time the way it ended up
oh,
doing?
of course.
Yeah, okay.
All of
So
his
it's always,
scripts jump around in time, except the ones that he didn't direct and people undid the way that he plays with time.
okay.
You know, like True Romance, which is much better when it jumped around in time, the way he wrote it. But anyway, so we turned the script in, and it's got all the parameters, and now they're going to have these 30 days. And Quentin had this theory. There were 2 things that you were very clear about. One, when people saw Reservoir Dogs, he was very surprised that they didn't know that they were allowed to laugh. So the one thing that he wanted to make sure is that people knew that they were allowed to laugh, that they didn't have to feel like, oh no, is it inappropriate that I'm laughing at this? He was like, no, I want them to know that it's okay, so I'm going to let them in on the joke. So, and also there were kind of 3 theories that I always remember from that time period. Quentin, aside from studying film, and he studied careers, and he felt that his second film was going to be what determined. Second films of filmmakers are more important than your first film. He always would say, your first film gets you your second film, and your second film gets you the rest of your career. So that's so he had this theory of Reservoir Dogs was extremely popular on home video. And he always knew that he had a big sort of exploitation audience. And there was a film that came out at the time that the Wayans brothers made called Mo Money. And Quentin was convinced that he felt that based on that audience that had seen the film on home video, with an $8.5 million negative, we were assured to do Mo Money business, which was $30 million. And I just remember you would go on and on and on about Mo Money. Yeah. And that was like, if Mo Money could do $30 million, we definitely can do that. And that was basically the model that we floated to TriStar. So ironically, we go into this big meeting with Mike Medavoy, who is the then chairman of TriStar. And I really don't feel ashamed about naming names because somewhere in a book he said he was proud he passed on the movie. So anyway.
Stacey Snyder.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so they're on this meeting.
Chris Lee.
And exactly. But we don't hold it against any of them. Anyway, so we forget all of those things. But
I made more money at Miramax. It was all a good thing.
So there's this giant poster of what was the super violent Sylvester Stallone movie where
Cobra?
No. Where he's like mountain climbing.
Oh, Cliffhanger.
Okay, Cliffhanger. There's this giant like 2-sheet of Cliffhanger on the wall with like $200 million worldwide behind Mike Medavoy's head as he starts to tell us about a Senate committee meeting he'd had that weekend about violence in film and how he couldn't make this movie because it was too violent. So they give us the movie back, and frankly, every major studio passed on it, and we were about to get a foreign financier to put up the money, and God bless Harvey, he thought he was in a bidding war with about 3 other studios, and because obviously he has always, he made he picked up Reservoir Dogs. Richard at Live Entertainment made Reservoir Dogs, and Harvey picked it up.
We totally thought that it was a bidding war.
Yeah.
We absolutely did. But the cool thing was we had sold Reservoir Dogs as a finished film to Miramax. And then I went there as head of production at Miramax. And then these guys gave me the script, Stacey and Danny and Lawrence. I read it. And I think they gave it to me like the day before they gave it to everybody else. Or that's what they told me to make me feel good or something.
No, we did.
And I gave it to Harvey. I read it and I really wanted to do it. And I had only worked there for like a couple of weeks, and I go, Harvey, look, there's a script I just read. It's Quentin's new script. I think we should do it. And I hand it to him, And he goes, I mean, what is this? It's like 160 pages. Like, you want me to read this? And I go, yeah, I want you to read it. It's really good. He goes, do you want to make it? And I go, yeah, I'd really like to make it. He goes, all right, fine. And he leaves. And he's like on a plane. And he calls me up. I'm in the office. And he goes, oh, my God, I just read like the first 20 pages. It's fantastic. You know, it doesn't stay this good. And I go, yeah, keep reading, keep reading. And then he calls me like 20 minutes later, and he goes, like, I'm on page like 42. It's fantastic. Just stay in the office. And so I'm like waiting in the office, like, okay, you know, and then like 20 minutes later, the phone rings, and he goes, fuck. And I go, what? He goes, John Travolta just died. And I'm like, and I go, right. He goes, I mean, you're going to kill the main character in the middle of the movie? It's stupid. And I'm like, right. And I don't say anything. He goes, what? And I go, nothing. He goes, is it a happy ending? And I go, just keep reading. He goes, oh my God, he comes back, doesn't he? And I go, just keep reading. He goes, just tell me what happens. And I go, I'm not going to tell you what happens. Just keep flying and just keep reading. And he goes, he comes back, doesn't he? I go, and he goes, just start negotiating. So we started negotiating.
That's great. So, at the time that you were bringing and shopping it to Richard, John was attached, or
No, it wasn't.
Nobody was attached.
Nobody.
He
There
was
was
using
just a
John
list.
as the no.
But
No,
you
it
wanted
wasn't.
John.
It wasn't. No.
No?
Michael was still involved, and in fact, this is my other
Oh,
favorite
that's
Quentin
right.
thing. My other favorite Quentin thing is that the character wasn't Vincent Vega originally. He was Victor Vega, because Victor Vega is Vincent Vega's brother, Michael Madsen from Reservoir Dogs. So they actually were the same character, and I just want him to make the movie of the Vega brothers, of Toothpick.
Well,
Nick and
they're
his-
both dead now, and
It's a
and now
prequel.
they're 15 years older and dead. So
That's true. I guess that kind of kills it, but you know, Toothpick Vic and.
So who has some memories of the shooting of this and what was going on and where around town you were going and what the set was like and what the pace was like, and anybody, anything?
well, it was like a 10-week shoot. What Richard was saying was true. It was just kind of it just seemed like a giant expanded version of Reservoir Dogs insofar as we had $8 million on Reservoir Dogs. We had 5 weeks. On this, we had 10 weeks. But you know, it's funny. That sounds like not that much now. But at the time, $8 million just seemed like so much. After making Reservoir Dogs for like 1.3, and then it got kicked up to 1.5 at the end, it was like, as far as I was concerned, I had money to burn, and we had all these like terrific actors, and you know, they would come in for a week or 2 weeks, and they'd split. And it was a blast. It was like there was only I remember the only thing as far as like when I started running out of time was the whole first week of the shoot was all the diner stuff at the Hawthorne Grill. So I actually shot the end of the movie at on the Friday of the last week. And there was one thing that was in the script, which I'm actually really glad it's not in the movie, but one thing that was in the script was you had a moment when Tim Roth has the gun on Sam Jackson, and then all of a sudden you see Sam Jackson pull this really big action scene where he blows away Pumpkin and he blows away Honey Bunny, and then you just realize that was in his mind. He was just thinking about what he could do, but he's not going to do it. And it actually played really well in the script because it was like you had your intellectual thing, but you also had your action too. You had the best of both worlds. But by the time getting around to do that, it was now Friday, or Saturday, because I think it was 6-day weeks. All right, it was Saturday, and I still had to do the end, and so I was like, okay, fuck that action thing. We don't have time for that. Let's just get rid of that. But then I remember getting indignant about it. Well, we have to call Miramax and make sure that's okay. What are you talking about? It's okay. It's my fucking script. I can decide not to shoot a scene. I go, well, it's kind of an action scene. They could use that for a trailer or something like that. So they eventually they said yes, but I was indignant. All right, that I didn't have the power to cut my own shit.
Anybody else have any memories of the shoot? Okay, so Sally, I want to talk to you about putting this.
I had
okay.
one-
Yeah,
I
I'll
had
bet
one-
you do.
Long story short, I just remember that box as being very, very small. That's my one vivid memory. Costume was small too.
There was one time that you started getting like, we had to give you orange juice or fluids or something. You started to get faint or something.
It was a little hot.
Betsy, was that a costume design or did he bring his own?
I think it was a pleasure chest rental. I think it was.
Okay. So Sally, let's talk a little bit about when did you come into the project, and what were you brought in and shown, or what did you have to work with? What were your first impressions of all this?
Well, of course, I was brought in at the very beginning, but we came from Reservoir Dogs, so we spoke the same language. So, like he said, we really just rolled right into it, and he did. I remember Quentin lying on. I was very pregnant, and lying on the bed, and him reading the script to me and talking about the different characters, and so there was that involvement prior to the shooting. So you kind of knew what was going on, but we really did just roll right into it.
So how much was what he was reading to you and the way he was describing it? How similar was it to what it ended up being?
Oh, really similar. It always is. Even on Kill Bill, I remember we went in, and he said, "Okay, this is the music that we're going to play here, and this is the music we're going to play here," and sometimes it switches around, but he definitely has it all in his head.
The one thing that was different was that after Reservoir Dogs, you had gotten burned on product placement clearances. People wouldn't clear stuff, which is why you created all of your own. And he didn't write any music numbers in because you guys had such a hard time getting stuck in the middle with you that he didn't want to tip anybody off how badly he wanted them by writing it into the script.
Yeah, so I'd actually practice I still keep to this day. All right, if a song is in my script, you can guarantee I don't intend to use it. It's just a smokescreen for whoever has it.
So talk about your songs that you choose, and also the interesting thing to me is watching this film. It doesn't look 15 years old at all. I mean, other than maybe the size of the cell phone, everything kind of.
We were joking about one thing. It's like one of the only things that actually really 100% dates it right now, other than the smoking in restaurants everywhere. All right, is the $5 shake ain't a fucking joke anymore. It's like, nah, it would be the $9 shake and the $5 cup of coffee.
So do you?
That was such a funny joke in '94.
So when you're choosing the music and when you're writing the script, are you aware? Do you consciously try and go for a classic feel? Or I mean, what's your approach to finding your stuff? Because I mean, there's also this kind of retro thing going on in it, but it's not. But it's clearly a modern retro that you're so.
Well, it's one of the things is like one of the things I want in my movies is that there's a whole bunch of decades bumping up into each other, so there's never one decade that it's representing.
It was not time specific.
Yeah,
we
it's
were
not,
purposely trying to do a movie. I know, I don't mean to interrupt, but Quentin actually, we talked about trying to do something that could be viewed 10 plus years later on, so we purposely mixed up the style of cars, the architecture, and that was the intention from the very beginning. With Reservoir Dogs as with Pulp Fiction. And we jumped on the opportunity to try to weave in the whole kind of modern or googie style, which we were really one of the first movies to grab that, which Quentin was very specific about the Jackrabbit Slim set being the set that he really wanted us to sort of shoot our wad and just really spend most of our money on. And that we actually, almost all the other rooms or spaces that we're in were also built. But Jackrabbit Slim's was a massive set that was styled after the Tiny Nailers that was up on Crescent Heights and Sunset Boulevard, and John Lautner's Henry's restaurant, which was demolished, but it was a googie style, and now that is still very popular.
Also, the hangout in Speedway. In Elvis,
The two descriptions was Elvis Presley's Speedway, which was this was Quentin's feed to us, was Elvis Presley's Speedway, which had cars cut in half, and the patrons would come in and sit in tables that were made out of cars. And then Redline 7000, which is
the Howard
James-
Hawks' Redline 7000.
James Caan's first movie, where the race car drivers would go and hang out in this bar, and they would play slot cart race. So we just incorporated all of that into this massive club that I still get calls. People wanted to know where is this place in LA.
There was a time when at the height of the Pulp Fiction success that Harvey Weinstein wanted to open up a series of Jackrabbit Slims, because that was kind of the thing at that time. There was all the Planet Hollywoods and the All-Star cafes and the Supermodel cafes and the Motown cafe and all that stuff going on, and they was going to open up this big Jackrabbit Slims and make a few of them and stuff, and they were all ready to do it. He had the money, he had the celebrities to do it and stuff, and I'm like, Harvey, I'm kind of making fun of those places. I kind of feel like a sellout to actually making one.
Well, that's what's interesting, because clearly there's a lot of your love for film in it, but there is also this unsettling thing going on there where it just doesn't quite work because it's not the real thing.
Well, in my script, actually, after describing it ad nauseum, all right, the whole what it's like, at the very end of the description, I just write this thing: this is either the best or the worst of these places, depending upon your point of view.
Well, I don't really know how to address it. It was a kind of a normal process of making things work in terms of pacing and story, and some things were playing too long and we would shorten them, and I know Quentin and I argued a lot about the dance sequence and is it too long, is it too short, and I think we found the perfect balance, and so we worked on a lot of things like that. But it was very much a normal process. There was nothing out of the ordinary, to make this film live the length that it lives in.
Actually, one thing, there was something that I've noticed when I watched it. I say I noticed it, but it hit me hard, even though I've always known it. It hit me hard when I watched it, like I said, 3 weeks ago, because I'm right at the very end of writing my next thing, and I was looking at it, and we didn't have that many scenes to drop. And we did a few things, and we dropped a couple of them, and I could have fucking told you we would have dropped them. I liked them anyway, but if you put me against the wall, I probably could have known we were going to drop them in the very beginning. And I just really liked them. But there were just a few, because it wasn't for sure. I knew the movie was going to get made, but it was like, if the script had been any longer than 160 pages, that would have really put that into doubt. And so I had some really cool, big set pieces and scenes that I wrote, but they never even were typed up. They never even made the typewriting draft of it, because I just knew they couldn't be that long. Now, I've never had that discipline again, but the thing about it is, those big giant scenes that you spend all this time shooting and stressing about and worrying about and then eventually drop them, well, I knew I just couldn't afford that. So, I had one of my favorite scenes of writing it was I actually had a giant scene from Fox Force 5.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you actually had this whole scene that you see Marcellus basically is actually it just starts on Fox Force 5. So you see this all the foxes are together and they're getting ready. They literally have a little diagram. They have a little scale model of whatever prison they're going to attack or fortress they're going to attack. Okay, so now Jasmine, at 5:02 you're here and you take care of these guys. Raven, at 3:02 you cross, and it was really cute. It was actually my favorite things to. It was the thing I was the most waiting to direct. I thought it would be so much fun, but I just knew it wouldn't survive. And Winston Wolfe had this huge setup. At that baccarat, 8 a.m. Cocktail party. All right, he had this huge set piece that is still one of the better character setups I've ever done, and then I put it in Kill Bill, And then I dropped it from Kill Bill as well.
I might add that you could argue that Kill Bill actually is Fox Force 5.
A lot of people have said that. They were assassins. They're
I know. And also the girls in the video in Jackie Brown.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The
girls who love
the
guns.
weapons. Yeah, girls who love.
I have a question for Sally. So this is one thing I was curious about, which I couldn't remember, is that when Bruce Willis is introduced and he's talking to Marcellus Wallace, and the whole thing plays on Bruce Willis, and then you reveal the back of the head of Marcellus Wallace.
Band-Aid.
So in the shooting of it, was there the side of Marcellus Wallace's face?
Yeah, there definitely was. And
So it wasn't scripted to not
You're
reveal
wrong.
his face in that
you
scene?
did shoot it.
No, I never did.
You shot, I think you did
No,
shoot
no,
a lot
no,
of
it
it.
was in the script. It was,
In the
you
script, you never
But-
saw his face?
No,
in the script, you never saw. You only saw the back of
Oh,
his
no,
head.
no,
for the
I'm
whole
sorry.
first
No,
half.
no, no. You always saw the back of his face, but cutting to him earlier is what I thought you were talking about.
Oh, but no,
We held on-
I never shot a shot of Marcellus's face.
No. But we held on Bruce for a really long time, and the decision of when to finally show the back of his head was something that we played with for a really long time. When is the right place? And again, yes, it's just Quentin.
No, but oddly enough, it was funny because actually that was one of the shots I was thinking about tonight when I was watching the Bruce Willis shot before we cut to the back head, because it does have this, he's not moving per se, and we even talked about that. Does it look like his face frame? Is it weird? Is it weird? And I remember sitting back there watching, go, man, if I had just had a little fan, in the back, just way, way, way in the back, just moving, and that would have just been this nice little eye stimulation that would have made this even a little better. That was the one thing I was thinking about sitting back there tonight. There should be a little fan right in the back there, just.
I think that's one of the things is that also when, we have all had the experience of reading the screenplay and then watching the filming and then watching the cut of the movie. And I think that the experience reading the script is so profoundly wonderful that you don't quite think it's going to actually be better when it's shot because it's so wonderful as a screenplay. But it does completely come alive. But a lot of these while there are actors that bring so much to it and are so inventive in what they do, which Quentin gives them obviously tremendous freedom to fool around and do all this and invent, but yet the structure is completely there. And so it's not an editorial concoction. It's scripted exactly that way. And so it's an interesting thing in watching it again and going through those kind of experiences of reading it. I remember with Reservoir Dogs, and we made Harvey Keitel a producer of the movie, and Harvey Keitel and I would always have these conversations about, can Quentin really direct? Is he going to fuck it up, or is he going to be really good? And we would have all these conversations about it. And then I remember we were shooting, and we had seen dailies for a couple of days, and I remember I said to Harvey Keitel, I think that the film might actually be better than the script. And he goes, well, what do you mean? I go, well, the experience of reading it in my apartment was so fantastic that I didn't think the movie could be better. And Harvey Keitel said, I don't know how that could be. I wasn't in your apartment when you read it.
I just have to say, being part of Reservoir Dogs, I knew he was going to be a fantastic director because the casting sessions were amazing. He, first of all, his years in the video store, he knows every movie. So trying to, actors would come in and they go, oh, wow, I love what you did in this movie. And that line that you said, and actors would be blown away. It could have been the most obscure piece of work. And he was just fantastic with them. You rarely meet directors who can articulate what they want to an actor. And he was just a joy. We just had a great time. And the difference between Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, agents weren't returning our calls. They didn't know what to make of Reservoir Dogs. And it was the script. It was the, actors on the street were just reading the script and trying to get in through the windows. It was just amazing. We had such a great time casting that movie.
Yeah.
What, Pulp Fiction or?
Well, Reservoir Dogs, but Pulp
Oh.
Fiction was a whole different thing. Pulp Fiction was like kids in a candy store after a while. We were invited to the agencies, and they were pitching the biggest names possible. And that was the first time I saw power in it, because Bruce was committed to a different movie at the time, and then we were going to move this movie to do.
And those
so we
movies never got made.
Right. But it was just a whole different thing. I mean, nobody on Reservoir Dogs, you know, it was just the actors reading the script and wanting to come in. On Pulp Fiction, everybody wanted.
Well, on the way that I read Reservoir Dogs was not from any literary agent or anybody like that. It was like Lee Stallman, who was working for Matt Dillon's agent. He wasn't even an agent at the time, going, "This is the best thing I've ever read," and telling people about it. Was like actor agents that told people about it. Not, you know, it wasn't like studio executives were reading it, or you'd hear about it in that way. It was just this kind of, you know. I also have to say, all of us who got, Sally, those of us who got the great pleasure of hearing you read the scenes as you were writing them. We knew that, you know, it also has to live up to Quentin's performance of it as he's actually writing it, which is a very tall order, too.
You know, one of the things actually we're not talking about, but it actually came to me as we were all talking about, a couple of people said, well, we got the script and then away we went. Well, there's a reason for that, why it was like a rush, way we went, and kind of always works out in the case of my movies. Is it's very rarely a situation where, I mean, after Reservoir Dogs, it was really a situation where I write it and then we are trying to get the people to make the movie. We always have a deadline that we're trying to make, and then in the case of Pulp Fiction, the deadline was Cannes. We had to have it done in time for May 94. Or I had to have it done in time for May, and that was why TriStar only had 30 days to say yes or no. Because if they, you know, actually, you know, they had longer, but we weren't going to let them have 30 days. They had 60 days. We were going to say, just give it to us or not, all right? And but because we didn't want to miss Cannes. And the whole thing was just to get it done in time for Cannes. And I didn't have any choice of, like, thinking any scene was so huge that I had to, like, add another week to it or nothing like that, or I would have missed Cannes. And literally, when we were finally done, no take-backs, okay, the print is done, was maybe 9 days before the start of the festival. And so we finished it, and I went to Europe for a week and chilled out, and then went to Cannes, and then it won the Palme d'Or. Now, the thing that's really interesting about that story is the fact that I never had any time from the point that I finished it to be, okay, done. Now there's some little downtime, maybe a month, maybe two, and then this will happen and that'll happen. No, it was make it, and then we won the Palme d'Or. All right, and then it was just huge. It was just this explosion, and I went all around the planet Earth with the film to all these different festivals. So basically, from the moment I finished the script till the end of the Oscar ceremony, which was on my birthday, all right, so to March 28th, all right, 95. There was never a break for me as far as Pulp Fiction was concerned. It was one gigantic journey with never a stop.
One interesting thing to note is that even after the film won the Palme d'Or, Harvey very wisely shut down anybody seeing the movie in Los Angeles, because the movie then didn't open until August. So
no, it opened in October.
October. It was supposed to open in August, and then he moved it.
Yeah. Because they were going to open it on the same day as Natural Born Killers. And initially, I was like, fuck yeah, let's do that, man. I'll kick those guys' asses. Fucking same day, baby. All right. I remembered that when the Brian De Palma, I was a big Brian De Palma geek, and I remember when Body Double had opened up, it had opened up within a week of Crimes of Passion, the Ken Russell movie, and all the Newsweek reviews put them both together, and the Times reviews put them both together. I go, oh my God, they're gonna fucking put my movie in with theirs. I can't have that, and that's why I didn't want to open up on the same day.
But wisely, he basically shut it down from then and didn't let anybody in Hollywood see the movie. Like, nobody was allowed to see the movie. You couldn't get into a screening. And I don't think anybody knew the phenomenon the film was going to be. I mean, the Palme d'Or was amazing, but, you know, the Kieslowski film was definitely going to win. We were too violent, or, you know, but it was like, oh, thank God, she was in Belle de Jour because that was kind of, you remember the whole
Yeah, but one of the things about it though is when she says he's stopping Hollywood from screening the movies, he was stopping the Bel Air screening room screenings, Schwarzenegger screening it at his house and stuff like that. He was stopping that, but we were screening it constantly because I was on the film festival circuit. Now, one of the great things about that was every critic on the planet Earth, not just American critics, every critic on the planet Earth got a chance to see Pulp Fiction 3, if not 4 times during the course of May before October happened at all these different festivals, and they're fighting about it, and they're arguing about it, and they're going to see it again, and then they see it a second time, they go, wow, it wasn't so violent the second time, it was actually a lot more fun, and it was a lot more comedy, and it was going back and forth, and they're writing about it all the time, so, people, even if you weren't hip to all that film festival stuff, it just kept making the entertainment pages of this contraband movie that's moving around
building
the
up
globe.
like the huge, leading up to the New York Film Festival, which is the last time that I saw the film on film all the way through, when, of course, when they put the hypodermic needle into Uma Thurman's chest, a woman passed out and fainted, and someone screamed, "Get a doctor, get a doctor." And they turned the lights on, and they stopped the film for 20 minutes at the New York Film Festival. Which, for Quentin was the greatest thing that could have happened, only because she was okay.
Unfortunately, she survived, and I don't have the bragging rights I could have had.
It won the Palme d'Or, one of the highest honors you could possibly have, in May. And then the movie didn't open until October. And, slightly different than what Stacey said, I was like, I don't think there's a person who hasn't seen this movie. And I don't think the movie's going to do all that well, because everybody I know in the world has seen the movie. We keep screening it. And then Miramax had the idea. Now, you have to realize at this time, it's 1994, 1995, and Miramax is not accustomed to wide releases of movies. They build their movies from city to city. You open New York and LA in a couple theaters, and then you go from 10 prints to 20 prints. And at that time, the widest release, today wide releases are 3,000 screens. At that time, a wide release was 1,200 screens. And they opened the movie on 1,200 screens. And I thought, you guys are insane. Okay, it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. It's with John Travolta, who nobody cares about. You're going to have to build the audience a little bit, just like you did with these festivals, and you're just going to toss it out there on 1,200 screens. We're going to get murdered.
But here's the amazing thing. It was The Specialist, right? Was the Warner's film?
We went up against The Specialist. Was out like on 2,300 screens, I think.
What was that, a Stallone movie?
The Stallone and Sharon Stone movie.
And what happened was, I remember you know how sometimes the grosses are inflated for the weekend by studios so that they can sort of have a bigger number? Well, they had to lie down because they'd so overinflated, and we beat them. But they reported that they were ahead of us, that they had to balance out how much they had over-reported. The following week, they had to lie down on their grosses to get to where they really were, because we had just cleaned their clock and nobody expected it.
It got a zeitgeist. And, but also I think another big, gigantic reason is also, it's really funny. I mean, in the case of Reservoir Dogs is actually a scream. It's very, very funny. Now, none of these, this is more of a comedy than Reservoir Dogs, but that was one of the big responses from people when you see Reservoir Dogs, that people talk about it when they first saw it, is like, that's one of the most intense movies ever. And then they see it a second time, like, God, it wasn't as violent as I remember it being. It's so funny. So this one, the comedy was more up front. All right, it's more up front. So yeah, there was the violence issue, and it was a big deal, and there was the racial stuff, and that was a big deal, and there was the time structure, and that seemed like a big deal at the time, even though not to me. And the length seemed like a big deal, even though it was one of the shorter movies I've made. And but the thing about it was a comedy, and it got its laughs. It was an entertaining movie to watch.
But I also think that because you worked so hard being out there, and we're a known commodity from Reservoir Dogs and then also from Pulp Fiction, in the way that you said it was a zeitgeist film, it's like that great Truffaut quote about when the fascination of the audience and the fascination of a filmmaker intersect, something really magical happens. And people knew your personality as a filmmaker. It was a completely fresh and unique, so many people have kind of ripped off Quentin's style since then, that when you see the movie, you are bowled over again by how completely exhilarating it is to see such a unique, well-crafted voice that's unlike anything else that you've ever seen, and is really, really funny too, and just entertaining and innovative, and works on so many levels. I mean, and the movie's really emotional at the end with Sam. It's really spiritual and deep and all these other things. So that, by the time people were there, there was this underground, because everybody had seen it in the world. You'd had so many word-of-mouth screenings at Miramax. Everybody felt like they had to. It was like there was this bubbling undercurrent, word of mouth, of you had to go see this. And then people saw it over and over and over again, because there was nothing like it before.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting tonight to hear all the laughs again. And I mean, there are any number of purported comedies that are out that don't get that many laughs in the theater as we were getting tonight. So it's very interesting. So Julia, you've been sitting here very quiet, and I'm thrilled to have you here because I want to know. Yeah. I mean, you popped into this thing at the end and had this scene with Harvey Keitel, and just talk about what your time on the set was, and I mean, what did you think of this when you became involved?
I had met Quentin. Danny DeVito hosted Saturday Night Live, and we just loved each other. We just like immediately hit it off, and we were talking about movies the whole week, and we went to this big long dinner. It was just like movies, and he said, "Okay, you've got to meet this guy. You've just got to meet this guy." And then the very next week, Harvey Keitel was hosting, and Quentin came along with him, and we met each other there at the party afterwards or something. And we started talking about Yasuhiro Ozu movies, I think.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And then we became friends, and then we started talking about movies all the time, and Quentin was writing Pulp Fiction, and I loved Reservoir Dogs so much. I mean, I still place that amongst, I think, my 10 favorite movies of all time. Like, that movie's so important to me. And anyway, so you were writing Pulp Fiction. You were calling me up, too, reading stuff to me. That was very exhilarating, getting those late-night calls. And what you'd written that day, and it was so great. And then you said, "I've got this part for you." And it was so, I mean, I feel like such a tiny part of this, but I feel so lucky that I got to be part of it. And the day on the set, I'll never forget it. Of course, I wanted to look, really beautiful. I remember, of course. And I came to the set thinking how I was going to look so great and thin. And then Quentin came in and said, "Okay, I want you to wear this shirt. It was my favorite shirt in high school. And it's this extra, extra large plaid shirt." And I just remember thinking, I'm going to look so terrible in that shirt.
You look adorable.
Well, I figured out how to wear it. And I remember dancing with John Travolta. He came and ran lines with me, and we were just like hanging out. I mean, I was only on this set for like 4 hours, I think. So many people ask me about the movie, and I go, that 4 hours was very grueling. I just remember John Travolta was so great, and he came and ran lines with me, and we were just trying to relax or something. People were just like hanging out for the whole 45 minutes before I went and shot. And he said, "Oh, let's dance." And like I just remember dancing with him, and then like in the middle of it, it occurred to me, like, "Oh my God, I'm dancing with John Travolta." So that was a great moment. And then being with Harvey was great because he had just hosted SNL, and we'd done this Pat sketch together, and it was really fun. So we got to do another scene together. It was great. I mean, it was so great. And I was so surprised, I guess, with Quentin. I mean, I loved Reservoir Dogs, so I knew, and I loved hearing about Pulp Fiction. I loved the script. But I was really amazed at how Quentin was on the set. Like, I don't know why I wouldn't have expected it, but I really felt like I was in the hands of a master, like somebody who really had seen the movie, knew the shot he wanted, knew the ad, like, but not in a way that was controlling, like, because I have worked sometimes with people where they've thought it out too much, like you can't do anything outside of what they pre-imagined. But with Quentin, it was this great thing where somebody really done their homework in the best possible way, like they'd seen it in every way, they'd thought about it in every way, but then they were open to things happening, and that was just an exhilarating thing to be on a set like that.
An exhilarating 45 minutes.
Quentin and we share this passion for Los Angeles, and we've had this wonderful opportunity. Can you hear me? To do a take on LA with Reservoir Dogs that was kind of a little off kilter, and then Pulp Fiction, and then Jackie Brown, all of which, Quentin loves the South Bay, so we went there for Jackie Brown, but we were trying to do a noir, and we were trying to get mileage out of it and do something that was timeless. We ended up trying to show different parts of the city. I mean, you wanna?
Sandy, are there things in this film that you still kind of like are really proud of, that there's like a little prop or something, or something in the way that, not the props, but the way a particular set is done, that you just think, okay, we nailed that, or that there's something that nobody else knows but I know it's there, or just
It was fun to see everything again fresh. As David said, as Quentin said, it was L.A. noir, but it was also, we mixed, rather than just the sort of three stories, almost every room you went into depicted almost a different part of L.A., either L.A. television shows or L.A. movies. So there was the 30s sort of apartment building, which was sort of the dope bust apartment. The Eric Stoltz apartment was a lot more sort of funky. Almost, I was surprised, it almost hasn't aged much at all. I mean, I can still see apartments like that today. And every character had a different time period and a different look to it.
who can address the hair? Because the hair is so much a part of the movie. Everybody has the really specific hairstyle.
Well, in particularly in the case of Sam Jackson, what happened there was, get people forever saying, you put him in a Jerry curl, why? And that was literally a happy accident. I had written it that he would have a big fro, not Link from Mod Squad, but a fro. And so the thing is, our makeup gal went out and came back with some wigs, and she didn't know a fro from a Jerry curl. So we had a bunch of them on there, and like, what the fuck is this? He goes, well, you asked for a fro. I go, that's not a fro, that's a fucking Jerry curl. What is he supposed to be spraying activator in his fucking hair all fucking every 2 seconds? And I was like, I can't put that shit on him, man. It was 1982, and I remember that was called the California curl. Anyway, but what happened was, we go, well, fucking it's here, put it on. And the minute he put it on, it just, that's Jules. That's Jules. And it didn't even look, and when I look at it now, I don't think that it's a Jerry curl. It just looks like Jules. It's just right. And that was just an ass backwards accident.
I just think it's appropriate at this time to finally make a confession 15 years later about what happened in the kitchen for your movie. Sound crews are pretty much like kitchen crews, and you don't know what goes on behind those walls. But at some point, we had to make the transition to digital editing. And your movie was it. The problem is, we didn't know how to use these machines. And so when Stephen Flick calls me, who was the supervisor, he said, have you ever used Pro Tools before? I go, sure. What that meant was that I took a class a year before. So we are in this group we're in an annex, because Weddington is doing so many movies that we are now separated from everybody else. And they're moving all these rigs in, and there's about 5 or 6 of us all scratching our heads, wondering how to use these machines to cut this movie on a pretty small budget from what we were used to. And we're looking at the reels, and each one of us has a different reel, and we're going and we're telling each other what's in the reels, because it's so fascinating and quirky and weird and everything. And then one editor says to me, I can't remember who it was, maybe it was Jim, he says, well, John Travolta just died. I said, he can't die. He's in my reel. And I've got a reel after yours. And we said, oh my God, somehow we have we have rebuilt this film because we don't know how to assemble it, because the assistants didn't know what we were, and we had to figure it out as we went along. And when we hit the stage, thank God it all came together. But you didn't know what we were doing back then.
Actually, I remember when we went to Warner Hollywood for the first time to screen, and the projectionist went, God, I don't know what happened. I put the reels out of order. I'm really sorry.
We really did. We thought we mounted them wrong.
That proceeded to happen in projection booths all around the world. I think it was Singapore and Indonesia. The distributor got the film and thought this is just bullshit, and actually cut the film and made it chronological.
Oh,
In
my.
Singapore and Indonesia, it was released that way. And then,
Have you ever watched it that way?
no, I never have. Fans have sent me videotapes of it cut together chronologically, but I've never had the desire to see it that way. They did. But this is great. They didn't get away with it because, I mean, once we had found, if we'd have found out, but we'd have found a way after the fact. But the audience found out about it and heard that was one of the things, and the audience and Singapore, the public of Singapore and Indonesia, made the distributors put it back the right way.